What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Duck Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you live on a Thursday, September the 12th, 2024. It is rivalry week between the Oregon State Beavers and the Oregon Ducks, the Civil War rivalry. Really excited to break this matchup down and give you our preview of this weekend's matchup. And we got Isaac Streeter in the house from the Portland Tribune, covers the Ducks and the Beavers. Best of both worlds. Isaac, how we doing, man? Good morning.
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to share what I know.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. Just a quick little disclaimer for the folks that are listening or are tuned in. Apologies for the delay on getting this thing started. Had some really bizarre audio issues. StreamYard wouldn't let me change my microphone to be this microphone. Wouldn't let me change my camera to my webcam. So hopefully I'm looking and sounding okay for all you folks out there. Thank you for your patience. And we know that Isaac sounds great and looks great. So we're all set there. Let us know how you're feeling in the chat here. You know, it's always fun, Isaac, with these live streams to let people know, what our thoughts are, but also get their thoughts here. We got Chavo0128 saying, "Yo, LFG, we're gonna right the ship on Saturday. Our players are going to remember what happened in 2022, and they won't let it happen again. They will keep the intensity turned all the way up." We got Rob here in the stream, in the chat. Morning, fellas. Good morning, Rob. Thanks so much for tuning in. And the way I kind of like to start some of these previews, Isaac, when I get to talk to another writer who covers the opposing team that Oregon's playing, is just a little bit of a vibe check, because it's a cool way to just kind of wade into the waters and see what the vibe of the fan base is. What's the pulse? I did a video earlier this week about the pulse check. Is Oregon the real deal? We're trying to figure that out still. So as someone who covers this Oregon State Beavers team, 2-0, coming off of a win over San Diego State on the road, 21-0. What's the vibe in Corvallis? What's the vibe around the Beavers?
Yeah, the vibes are pretty high right now. Obviously, this is a team that got kind of left behind in the reshuffling of conference realignment. Things are different now. Obviously, news broke today that the Pac-12 is going to be pushed up to 6 teams, with the addition of a couple Mountain West schools. But in terms of on-the-field play, the vibes are good. Obviously, they're 2-0. This is their biggest test of the entire season, and they got to play it in week 3. This team is very willing to go out and compete. They've preached physicality all year, and they've proven it early, pitching a shutout against San Diego State and running the ball really, really physically against Idaho State in their season opener. They fully believe that they can contend for a bid to the college football playoff, and the path is pretty clear for them to get that bid. They can't lose a game all year. They gotta go perfect 12-0 and earn that bid into the college football playoff. But as of right now, they're ready to go for this game. They're not giving Oregon any billboard material this week. They've kept it very calm with the preaching a mentality of just another game. They treat everything like it's a college football playoff game, but obviously this is a big game for both schools.
It's a little wild, Isaac, to hear you mention the playoff and connect that with Oregon State, because the offseason that they had was as tumultuous, chaotic, whatever word you want to use, as any program in the country. Jonathan Smith, kind of one of the golden boys of the program, former player. He's the head coach. He said in his intro press conference, more or less, this is where I want to be. Maybe he didn't say I'm not leaving, but no one really expected him to leave. But amid conference realignment, pretty obvious that he wanted a better spot with more stability, maybe. Heads over to East Lansing to take over that Michigan State program. And now you got the Beavers with a little bit of a new flavor with Trent Bray taking over. And I listened to his press conference. He's very strictly business, but is confident in his team. Some same identity with the run game over there in Corvallis, and they're definitely leaning on that defense. But it's going to be a fun one with the rivalry week kind of here early. across the sport, more or less. I think, at least on the West Coast, you have the Civil War game this weekend. You have the Apple Cup between Washington and Washington State. So it's going to be a fun one. And I'm excited to learn more about this Oregon State team as we bring you on and get to share some of your thoughts. So given that we already know kind of what the vibe is there in Corvallis, let's just talk a little bit about the vibe in Eugene. And I think one very easy way to kind of gauge the vibe, sometimes, not always, is the head coach, Dan Lanning. His most recent press conference on Wednesday, at least the one that we got shared in the media files, was 2 minutes and I think 34 seconds. So just kind of, I thought that was hilarious as far as just where this team is at. And it seems like they're super laser focused, but at the same time, it also feels like all the questions that people want to ask have already been asked. Oregon struggles on the offensive line. Hey, what do you think about the 2022 game when the Ducks went into Corvallis and they lost? So it's a strange vibe around Oregon right now since they haven't been living up to their expectations, and they're definitely looking to right the ship, at least as far as things go in Corvallis, getting a win over there.
Yeah, for sure. This Oregon team is kind of reeling right now, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen. Obviously, that Boise State game did not go as planned. Idaho, even less so. It's been interesting to see how this team has approached it. I've never seen a coach more disappointed after 2 wins than Dan over the past 2 weeks. But obviously this is still a team that has national championship aspirations, that has been picked by multiple people to win a national championship, and they're coming in still as a top 10 team in the country. Obviously they're stacked across the board. It's going to be a challenge no matter what way you slice it.
We got a couple of comments here in the live chat that I want to hit on real quick, Isaac. This one comes from Cato. Thoughts on the O-line chemistry when Bedford comes back? And then kind of a two-parter follows it up with, do you think it'll be another adjustment the O-line has to overcome? So Matthew Bedford has kind of been the hot topic, if you will, in the offensive line room for Oregon, because we heard back in fall camp, I think it was, Isaac, that Dan Lanning was saying, well, we hope he'll play again, more or less, at some point this season. And then now you have, over these past couple weeks, will he play? Will he not play? And I got to give props to my guy, Eric Scopel, for the way that he asked that question. Are you confident that Matthew Bedford is going to play this weekend against Oregon State? And Dan still didn't really tip his cap. He just said he could, I think is what he said in the press conference. So we still don't really know if Bedford's going to be back. It seems like the plan has kind of been trying to get him back coming out of that bye when the Ducks face UCLA, I believe. So I think that if he comes back, it'll be great because you have another experienced guy, someone who's played a lot of football, obviously a really talented player for Oregon to seek him out in the transfer portal and bring him in. But I don't think it's going to be just, some Band-Aid that you can stick along the O-line and then everything's going to be rocking and rolling again, because this is a group that has clearly struggled to get 5 guys on the same page, playing to the same level. So I kind of view it at this point, like Cato says in the question here, I think it'll be another adjustment whenever that happens.
Yeah, I think we're really starting to treat the Matthew Bedford situation like a silver bullet, that this is just going to solve the problems that they have up front. And unfortunately, it's just not going to do that. If you break down some of these PFF grades, the issues along this offensive line are not solely coming from Poncho at right guard and Charlie Pickard at center. These obviously they've struggled, Poncho mightily, but the Josh Connerly and Johnny Cornelius are not free of blame in this situation. They haven't been great. They've let up a lot of pressure. You got to have 5 guys all on the same page, and I'm not entirely sure if just adding Matthew Bedford into this mix at right guard completely solves that issue. I think there's a lot of work to be done, especially figuring out center, and especially moving Nishad Strother around from into that left guard spot, putting Marcus Harper. I don't know why I just forgot his name, but sliding him over to right guard. There's a lot of issues along this offensive line, and it's becoming pretty apparent. I'm not entirely sure that just putting Matthew Bedford in there completely fixes everything.
I don't think it does. And we seem to be on the same page as far as that goes. And I think one of the things that I was thinking about that was interesting, I listened to a lot of 49ers radio, 49ers podcasts, because that's my team. And my guy Larry Kruger over there on the Krug Show says that your kind of analysis or thoughts on the team has to change week to week if you're going to stay current. So I don't think I'm ready to write the Oregon offensive line off at it by any means. I'm not ready to write Alik Terry off by any means, but that what we have to work with over these 2 weeks isn't great. And now they have another chance to try to set that right this week against Oregon State that plays great defense. So it's going to be a formidable challenge. And we got another comment here from X Spindrift saying, O-line issues and we can't stop the run has me worried. Boise State kind of did what they want on the ground, which is, I think, a huge credit to Ashton Genty. Crazy game for him, 25 carries for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. As a team, if you add in some of the runs from Maddox Madsen and Sire Gaines, the Broncos had 221 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns, and we're averaging 6.7 yards per carry. And you have to give a shout out to that offensive line, just moving guys around. And that's a little bit of an area of concern for me, just because Oregon State has been, and so far is, a run-first team under Trent Bray. And stopping the run was a strength for Oregon last year. So that's going to be a big test, the Oregon run defense against the Beavers rushing attack.
Yeah, it's not getting any easier when you come to Corvallis to play this team. They're the number 5 rushing team in the country right now. They're averaging 5.5 yards a carry, and their offensive line is incredibly old and talented. Especially when they're going to deal with some injuries this week. Starting right guard Tyler Volton's done for the year with a knee injury, and Grant Stark, the right tackle, is going to be kind of a game time decision after exiting last week. But regardless, this team can run the ball. It's not Ashton Genty in the backfield, who, for my money, is probably the favorite for the Heisman and a first-round pick, and I don't even advocate for drafting running backs in the first round. But Anthony Hankerson and Jam Griffin are nothing to be sneezed at. These guys can carry the ball. I have that written down as kind of one of the biggest matchups to watch is how is this offensive line going to match up with the Oregon defensive line, who is loaded with talent, recruiting pedigree, all of that production. But how is the scrappy Oregon State offensive line and run game going to really match up with them?
And I like that you bring up the recruiting, Isaac, because that's my bread and butter. I love recruiting. I can't get enough of it. But there may not be a better team as far as embodying this. We don't care who you are. We're going to come right at you head on and give you everything that we have, injuries or not, transfer portal or not, having a conference or not. Oregon State is just, they always have this identity of, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and give them everything you got. And I think that makes them fun to watch. Even if I'm covering Oregon, I can still say that for sure. And Oregon State has that kind of two-headed monster here with Jam Griffin and Anthony Hankerson, really divided up those carries well. Last week, 18 for Griffin against the Aztecs, 16 for Hankerson. So Oregon's defensive line has always been looked at, I think, as a strength. And to their credit, Derek Harmon has had a really strong start to the year, but a lot of that has been in generating pressure. So you kind of wonder how much that really will factor into this one against a team that really likes to run the ball. So we're talking a little bit about this Oregon State offense and trying to get people up to speed on what the Beavs kind of bring. Talked a little bit about the running backs, but let's get some thoughts on Giovanni McCoy. The Idaho transfer comes in to lead this Beavers offense, and he had a pretty solid day, 16 of 26 for 181 yards and a touchdown against the Aztecs. But what do you make of this Giovanni McCoy guy?
Yeah, I've been kind of the conductor of the Giovanni McCoy train for quite a long time. Back in December, before he had even entered the transfer portal, I wrote that he should be an option that Oregon State should pursue. He's a Jerry Rice Award winner at Idaho, who have a long track record of making the adjustment to the FBS level. The Jerry Rice Award is presented to the top freshmen in FCS football. Guys like Cam Ward and Shador Sanders have won this award in the past. There's a track record of these guys making the jump to the FBS level and finding immediate and a lot of success. I don't think Giovanni McCoy is really any different. He might not be, a Shador or a Cam Ward level talent, but this is still a guy that can play football. He was in a really, a dog of a quarterback battle this year in a three-way battle with Ben Goldbranson and Gabari Johnson, and came out on top. He was announced as the starter just a few days before the season began. But in his own defense, when he has been asked to throw the ball, which has been pretty rare, he's done a good job. He's been a good quarterback. He's been able to push the ball down the field, and he hasn't made any mistakes. He's been graded without a single turnover-worthy play so far this season. And he's a gamer. It shows up.
Yeah, he's been fun to watch a little bit. He's got some wheels too. I think that's something that you got to keep an eye on. Just the dual threat quarterback, that always is a challenge that can present itself for a defense. So the Oregon State passing game has been limited, I think, to start the year is probably a fair way to put it. Trent Walker is probably their most explosive playmaker in the passing game. He had some really nice catch and runs that I was watching against the Aztecs, had 8 catches for 92 yards against the Aztecs. So I think that we'll probably see Jabbar Muhammad against Trent Walker, but Oregon's got to feel confident about their cornerback play, I think, through a couple of weeks here, whether it's Jabbar Muhammad or Nico Reed, who's really stepped up after his first year with the Ducks last year. Dante Manning has looked solid so far. I don't think he's been a liability in pass coverage. And Brandon Johnson has been a tremendous addition. He's not a cornerback, I know, but if we're just talking DBs, I think he's probably right there in the discussion for Defensive Player of the Year, Defensive MVP of this squad so far. So I think I'm going to be really looking for Oregon to contain that run game, because it seems like the Beavs are a little bit one-dimensional on offense. And if they can do that, if they can kind of take Oregon State's biggest punch out of the gate, I think they're going to set themselves up for success on Saturday.
Yeah, I'd push back on the one-dimensional piece just a little bit. I think that's been more out of they've had the ability to be one-dimensional and win football games. They haven't had to lean on McCoy yet as a guy to go make a play and to win you a football game. You throw the ball 10 times against Idaho State and only a handful more against San Diego State. They've been very able to lean on their run game and have it work for them. But I am also very excited to see how he performs. I've got it written down as one of my biggest question marks is how does he react when he plays a secondary like Oregon's?
Yeah, I like the pushback there, because I want to have that good discussion and not always just be like, oh yeah, you say this, I think that too. So that's definitely fun. And yeah, that's a good way to look at it, because it's like, well, if it's not broken, why fix it? If we can just run the ball, who says we need to pass the ball? And I think that was one of the things that stood out to me when I was listening to Trent Bray and his press conference from earlier this week, as far as just the identity of the team. I think that was around the question that he was being asked, and being able to run the ball and sustain these drives has helped them have a good defense is kind of the point that he was getting at, which is so interesting because it's almost a direct opposite of what Oregon's been having. That Jordan James has had a really good year statistically so far. He's averaging over 6 yards a carry. He broke 100 yards in the Boise State game, almost had 100 yards in the Idaho game. But just drive to drive, Oregon hasn't been able to establish a consistent run game. And they've shot themselves in the foot quite a few times, had a lot of missed opportunities offensively. And what that's resulted in is the defense being out on the field more than it probably needs to, and more than Dan Lanning would like to. So if Oregon can get the run game going effectively against the Beavers, I think that could really help the defense flourish and kind of tap into some of their full potential.
Yeah, and it's totally it's exactly what Oregon State wants to do. Is what Oregon hasn't been able to. They lead the country in time of possession. They're holding on to the ball, and through 120 minutes of football, they've had it for 78. They're gonna run the ball as effectively as possible and keep the ball out of the hands of Oregon. And if they want to win that game, that's how they're gonna have to do it. Is be effective on the ground, churn out 4 yards a carry, and yeah.
Before we get any further on today's episode of the pod, I want to give a quick thank you and shout out to one of our sponsors here on the Ducks Dish podcast, and that is Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your dinner plans are tonight, but head on over to Ranchito Grill at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. and you got to try their homemade tortillas. They got great food, great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. We're here on a Thursday morning talking with Isaac Streeter of the Portland Tribune. I'm your host, Max Torres, with ScoopDuck on 3, previewing number 9 Oregon against the Oregon State Beavers. So glad and so grateful to have you guys along for another episode of the pod. Do me a favor, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. Tell a friend. We're trying to build this community into the best Oregon football community on the interwebs and certainly here on YouTube. We got a couple more comments here in the live chat that we can address, Isaac, which I think is always fun. This one comes from Eric, who's a frequent viewer and listener. Eric says, how crazy would you have called me if a month ago I told you we wouldn't have seen Dante or Novosad 2 games into the season? What are your thoughts on this one, Isaac?
I would also think you're crazy. When I came into the season, Oregon, I cover both programs, but I thought Oregon was clearly, a top 4 team in the country, and I've been as surprised as anyone with their performance out the gate this year. I really thought I was looking forward to seeing hopefully a dose of Dante Manning Dante Moore against Idaho, and we didn't. And we haven't seen Austin Novosad yet because they've been in these dogfights for 60 minutes. It's been really surprising. But hopefully you'll get your taste of both of them at some point this year.
I'm shocked. I would have called you crazy, Eric. Super crazy if you told me that a month ago, because the expectation has been that Oregon was going to be able to put both of these first two opponents away with relative ease. And I think that part of that certainly has to be giving credit to those 2 programs. Jason Eck and the Idaho Vandals, I think they're going to have a great year, and they clearly gave Oregon everything they could handle. And then same story, different week with Boise State and what they were able to do. But at the same time, we also have to be real here, Isaac, and talk about how Oregon has been shooting themselves in the foot. There's been a lot of penalties. I know Marcus Harper said yesterday that 8 penalties isn't winning football. So that's certainly something that they're going to have to clean up if they really want to kind of get tapped into that next level of what they're ultimately able to achieve. And one of the other elements of this game that kind of comes to mind for me is this is Oregon's first road game of the year. Sure, it's only like a 40-minute drive out to Corvallis, but Oregon's going to have a lot of their fans there. But Reser Stadium's finished now, which is super exciting, I'm sure, for you who covers Oregon State and then all the fans out there in Corvallis. But this is their Super Bowl, and they're going to be up for this game. So I think Oregon's culture is kind of being tested here, that the discipline that they have, the veterans that have played in this game and remember walking off the field 2 years ago in Corvallis to a loss. This clearly isn't the same Oregon team that we saw a year ago. That doesn't mean that it's worse, but certainly not playing up to the level that people expected. So I think that that's one of the storylines just kind of going into this game is how is Oregon going to handle themselves? What's the first punch that they're going to throw, or how are they going to react to that first punch or that first blow that they receive from the Beavers on Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, Oregon State gets its little brother rap plenty, but this is still a very passionate fan base. Oregon State sold this game out, and Dan Lanning's never won at Reser Stadium. Obviously, he's in his 3rd year, but he's never won in this stadium. They're loud. They're very noisy. Probably not Autzen levels, but it's not going to be a quiet environment, and they're going to make this offense's life hell when they're out there on the field and do the best they can to be disruptive and be that 12th man.
Let's talk about some other players that we are going to kind of have our eye on this weekend. We can talk offense, we could talk defense on either side of the field here, which program you want to choose. I think some of the guys that come to mind for me, let's start with Oregon. I'm thinking Evan Stewart on offense, and I'm thinking Devin Jackson on defense. It seems like Evan Stewart. It seems like Evan Stewart has kind of found his footing a little bit more in this Will Stein offense after transferring over from Texas A&M. He found the end zone for the first time as a Duck. Not really sure if I was totally feeling the dance. Not in terms of he shouldn't have danced. I just don't know if it was the one that I would have broken out personally. But he is super explosive, and I think he's going to be one of the best weapons that you have in this offense. And then Devin Jackson, I mean, that dude is all over the field. Came up big with some blocks on those returns on Saturday against Boise State, and he seems like someone that is just going to play a huge role in this Oregon defense, even if it's just in the 2 deep moving forward this year.
Yeah, and I'd say even more so than Devin Jackson is Bryce Betcher and Jeffrey Pasa for this one. Obviously, Bryce has played a ton so far this year, and I think for my money, he's been the best linebacker against the run. For a team that wants to run the ball a lot, he's going to be a guy that is going to get a lot of snaps in this game and is going to have to make an impact. I think I've got 3 different matchups written down that I'm looking forward to seeing, and they're all in the trenches. The first is Jordan Birch against Oregon State left tackle Jared Christian Lichtenhan, who is affectionately named Tank by the Oregon State team as well as fan base. This guy's 6'10", 320 pounds. He's ginormous. Jordan Birch isn't a small guy either, but watching these two go at it on the edge is definitely going to be interesting. The next is who's going to play next to Christian Lichtenhan is Josh Gray. He was the starting left tackle last year. He's kicked inside the guard now because that's where his NFL projection is more likely. He's a 6-year senior. He's going to have to go up against Jamari Caldwell and Derek Harmon, who have been 2 of the best interior pass rushers in the country this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing that matchup. And for the Oregon offensive line, I'm excited to see how they handle Thomas Collins, who's been another really good interior pass rusher. This time he's playing at Oregon State. When interior offensive line play has been such an issue for Oregon, this guy's a monster, and I'm really excited to see what the game plan is, how to weaponize Collins, as well as what Oregon State's plan, or as well as what Oregon's plan is to stop him.
I did not know that Oregon State's left tackle was 6'10". You absolutely perfected that name pronunciation. I don't think I could say it again.
Lichtenhausen? Had to say it a lot. Jared Christian Lichtenhan.
Lichtenhan.
But we just call him Tank.
That'll be a fun matchup. Tank versus Jordan Birch. I think Jordan Birch is off to a pretty solid start this year. He'd probably tell you himself that he wishes he could have grabbed that interception last week against Boise State.
You should have seen him in the post game when we brought it up.
Yeah, he definitely wanted to have that play back, but I think he's a player that already looks like he is benefiting from the additions of Jamari Caldwell and Derek Harmon, because it's really kind of a pick your poison if you're an offensive coordinator who you're trying to hone in on. And Mateo Uyunglele has had a great start to the year as well. So if they're going to be able to slow down this Oregon State offense, I think it comes with winning matchups like the ones that you mentioned. And how is that rotation going to look along the offensive line? Harper was talking earlier this week about the fact that they're having to rotate, and he said that we all cross-train, so it's not like we're kind of feeling out of our element. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here when you move sides of the ball. And Lanning said that part of this is going to be just waiting for guys to get healthy, and they're going to have to keep rotating because clearly they don't know as of right now. They don't feel like they have enough of a body of work to confidently say, these are our best 5, throw them out there. And that's going to be a challenge that they're going to have to overcome. And I wonder how much more difficult that is when you're playing on the road.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, let's see what else we got here, Isaac. This is kind of just a cool little shout out. One of the guys that I've always noticed in my streams, we got Mello, number 7 here, who is an Ohio State fan, and he shows up in the stream like all the time. So just wanted to give you a shout out, Mello. Appreciate you tuning in. I think that the conference realignment has been really fun because you get fans tuning in from other teams and other parts of the country. And I think Sean here is also an Ohio State fan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but really glad to have you guys along here on the stream and getting to be part of all of this awesome college football discussion. We're going to go a couple more minutes if that's all right with you, Isaac. We do have a comment here from Duck Ducks Forever 87, who says, Ducks win comfortably. We're overlooking the fact that Oregon State was only up 7-0 to a bad SDSU team with a freshman quarterback who had an injured leg. Both Oregon's opponents have been better than Oregon State's. What say you, Isaac?
He's not wrong. That was definitely a rock fight through 3 quarters. I was watching it while I was in the Autzen press box for the Boise State game this past weekend. It was a rock fight, and that offense did not look great at times. Obviously, fumbling the ball in the red zone isn't great, but what I think it does is speaks volumes about how resilient that team is and how strong they are defensively. I don't really obviously you did play a freshman quarterback, and you're not going to get that in Dylan Gabriel. He's far more experienced than his name's slipping my mind. O'Neal, the SDSU quarterback, is. But regardless, I think that was as much of a wake up call for Oregon State as anything. Obviously, they come back, they put up 14 on them and towards the end of the game. But Oregon's opponents have been better than Oregon State's, but Oregon State has a higher point differential at the moment. They've beaten these teams by bigger margins than Oregon has beaten theirs. And both teams are standing here 2-0.
Both teams are 2-0, and I think we're going to get a great game on Saturday. I like that the comment started with Ducks winning comfortably, because maybe that's a good way to segue into our last portion of the show with some score predictions, Isaac. Always fun to kind of put the guest on the spot. I, of course, already made my score prediction over on ScoopDuck, so go check that out if you haven't already. But my score prediction, I went really, really close to predicting the spread, which I think was around 16 the last
16
time
and a half
that I saw it, 16 and a half. I predicted an Oregon win 31-17. And that was an interesting one, because I know Justin was mentioning it a little bit in his portion, but I'm just still really skeptical of the Oregon offense. I think I'm more confident in the Oregon defense than the Oregon offense at this point in time, but I'm not ready to predict some large offensive output from the Ducks until I see them operate more effectively. And I'm just interested to see how they respond to that environment and the atmosphere at Reser Stadium. Not to say I don't think they can respond well, but we haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen how Dylan Gabriel operates with thousands of fans from the opposing team screaming, and how everything looks at where was I going with that? We just haven't seen how he reacts in a hostile environment, which I think it's very fair to call Reser Stadium now that it is complete with all those screaming fans. So we'll see. I think if Oregon can slow down the run, then that's going to be a huge part of if they're going to be able to win. But can the Oregon offense match what that Oregon defense is giving them, and vice versa? So I'm going to go 31-17. I'm giving Oregon State some credit here, but I think it'll be maybe a close game. We'll see.
Yeah, our scores aren't too far off in terms of prediction. I'm going to go 24-17 Oregon. I think Oregon gets out of this game with a win, but I think this is another ugly one for them. I think this Oregon State defense is a lot better than it's being given credit for, and I think it's a better defensive unit than Boise State is. I just don't think that Oregon State is going to have the physical talent, size, and experience to beat Oregon offensively. I think that defense is just too loaded. I think it's going to give them a lot of headaches if they can't establish the run early. But I also think Oregon State is going to be able to generate pass rush as effectively as Boise State did and stop the run. So yeah, give me an Oregon win, but a 24-17 one.
And it certainly feels right now that Oregon needs a win in the worst way, and a commanding win at that. You're glad to be 2-0 heading into this game, but the vibe around the program almost might as well be that they're 0-2, because they are playing so far beneath the standard that the coaches have set, that the players have set, and certainly that the fans have become accustomed to. So I think if you can get out of this game with a win, head into one of your 2 byes before you face UCLA, I think then that's a good situation to be in. Andrew's got a score prediction. He says he has Oregon winning 15-10, just ugly. Sean, one of our resident Ohio State fans, says Oregon State 17-13. maybe this one's going to be an absolute slugfest. I know it rained a little bit yesterday. I don't know what the forecast is for Saturday, Isaac, but maybe this, if there's some rain, that could factor into this one. Have you had a chance to look at the rain forecast?
Yeah, no rain currently projected, but it's going to be a chilly one.
A chilly one. Okay, yeah, this is an earlier game for both teams, 12:30 kickoff on Fox, if you're not going to be able to make it out to Corvallis. But, man, Isaac, it's been a great chat. Apologies for the delay and the technical difficulties. Hopefully it's been okay on your end. But I know we're a little bit over 30, so just kind of wanted to give you the floor if there was anything else you wanted to add here before we get to kickoff on Saturday.
Yeah, no, just thanks for having me. You guys can find my socials and my name if you want to drop me a follow on Twitter. Give the Portland Tribune a subscription, if you will, and keep me gainfully employed.
There you go. Yeah, you guys definitely need to check out Isaac. StreamYard has been giving me some fits here, but I think I should at least be able to do this. Here he is, Isaac Streeter, at Isaac_Streeter over on Twitter/X. So go give him a follow and check out what he's doing over at the Portland Tribune. Been awesome having you on, Isaac. If you guys want to find more of me, you can follow me on all social media platforms, I should say, at Torres Sports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. Like and comment. Let me know how you're feeling about this matchup. Also wanted to give a quick little shout out to a promo that we have going on. If you guys want 50% off an annual ScoopDuck membership, head on over to ScoopDuck.com and use the promo code GODUCKS to get that 50% off. Not going to want to miss it as football season continues to heat up. And I also think that recruiting is only going to get more interesting as the year goes on, as the season goes on. And then do me one last favor. Share the show, share the Duck Stitch podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. Been great having you guys on. A big thank you to Isaac, and we will see you in the next episode of the Duck Stitch podcast.